And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Dan Stratford, Dave Lochran along with you on this Friday morning, getting ready for what is a slim Friday slate. 7 games on this slate, and yes, I counted them accurately this time before saying that. Before I get to the pleasantries with Dave, don't forget Early Bird. Promo code, one word, over there on Awesemo.com gets you 50% off your first month. So if you want to check out Awesemo, you get 50% off and get in the door there. You can, of course, always watch our free videos over on YouTube. The NBA Strategy Show will be coming up at 9:15 Friday morning. You get the deep dive with Dave and Adam at 5 p.m., and then you have live before lock leading up to lock with Spags and or Josh and Ed Fear. So with all that said, Lofty, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm good. I loved the Thursday Kyle Lowry's going to rest along with Kawhi Leonard. Kyle Lowry is now available. Kyle Lowry is now starting for the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah. And
gotta love the NBA.
A lot of people were pretty upset about the early goings of that game. And he finished off all right. I think he finished like 40 or so. Let's see what he finished with, because that was a close 41. Game. 41, yeah. There you go. 41.
A good game. 16-8-8. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been a whole lot worse. I've got to tell you though, Dan, I think it's time to legitimately start wondering and worrying about what's wrong with Victor Oladipo.
Sure.
Right? I mean, here's the deal. Victor Oladipo is a really good player. And forget about the year he played with Russell Westbrook. I wiped that off out of my memory, because we've seen how that. I mean, to be fair, Paul George has done a phenomenal job coexisting with Westbrook, because they are different enough players. When it came to Oladipo, it just wasn't there, right? It just wasn't there. In Indiana last year, and the beginning of this year, before that injury, Oladipo looked like, a legitimate all-star, right? I mean, he looked really good. I'm not talking about like first team all-pro, whatever they call it, but an all-star. And now, I mean, this dude, he's not the reason they're winning games. I mean, they got cooked by the Sixers last night, but for the most part, they have been winning, games, and against good teams, bad teams, doesn't matter. They've been playing really well, and it's almost in spite of Oladipo right now. Still a good defender, don't get me wrong. But after last night, I've been watching him a lot lately, and it looks on the court like he seems like the same person, but the results are just so much different than we've seen in the past. It's really, really odd. And we used to always say sub 8K Oladipo, lock him in. And I want to keep saying that, but I don't know if we can right now until we see it turn around. And you don't want to play the wait and see game in DFS. You want to get to the guy before everyone else does, right? But I mean, how many times do you have to play that hand before you realize it's a bad hand?
It's been a rough go, and been a price point that you're probably gonna have to subtract 500 to 1,000 from that 8K price point before you're locking and loading and hoping for the upside. It just hasn't looked quite right.
5,000 from it.
500. I might have said 5K. I didn't mean to. 500 or 1,000 is what I meant to say.
Oh, that might have been what you said. My fault. Yeah.
I do need to read this, and then we can get to Friday slate. Fantasy Labs, which sure is a competitor of ours, but everybody follows them for status updates. Fantasy Labs NBA
good job, man. Good job.
Tweets out Michael Beasley, parentheses, had practice shorts on instead of game shorts, headed to locker room Thursday.
This has happened a couple times this season. Players have done that. I've seen a few of them go on the court with the snap down pants on. Yep. Some wild stuff. Yeah, there's always something interesting going on.
And the Beasles likes to party, so there may have been some.
Oh yeah. But
that's such a great tweet, and it's not the fake NBA injury account that's very funny as well, but it is legitimately their status update account that sent that out. So fantastic. Yep. Hopefully he got that sorted out. We have 7 games on this slate. We have no James Harden. We do have Anthony Davis as one of our more expensive. You have Davis, Durant, and Curry all over 10K. And then you have the likes of Towns and Vucevic. Kyrie Irving is 9K. So we'll go through position by position here, give you an early take. Dave has your deep dive every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You need to subscribe to awesemo.com to see that. You get Dave on the strategy show on Tuesday and Thursday, Adam on Monday, Wednesday, Friday to get you going. And I believe Adam's on Saturday, too, for the strategy show with EMAC. So you get 4 days a week of Adam, Ship My Money Share, and then you get Lofty Tuesday, Thursday. You get the write-ups from them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from Adam. And, of course, you get projections. You get the grades and lineup builder from Awesemo, also known as Alex Baker, and a ton more of content over there at awesemo.com. So let's dive in here, Lofty. Obviously, a lot to talk about at the top where we have Steph Curry in a 241 over-under with a just -6 for the Golden State Warriors here against the Clippers. He made 9 of 17 three-pointers. He is the first player in NBA history to hit more than 8 three-pointers in 3 consecutive games. So we'll try to keep that streak alive and try to push what's been a very solid season. We talked MVPs with James Harden the other day. There will be people who make a case for Steph Curry if he continues on this trajectory, even with the games missed and how the Warriors struggled when he was out, will be the narrative you hear there. You have Kyrie coming off a very solid game and the admission that he called LeBron James and apologized for being a young punk. And that's my words, not his. And that's great to see for Celtics fans. If Kyrie stays around, the maturation of Kyrie Irving and becoming more of a leader and understanding his place and role with the team and his former teams is a great thing to see from a leadership perspective. Donovan Mitchell is at 8.9, Lillard 8.6, D'Angelo Russell sticks around the low 7s at 7.3, and then we get into the likes of Lou Williams. Alfred Payton's up to 6,400. Jeff Teague is at 59. Derrick Rose at the same price point as well. Dinwiddie coming off a good game is at 5,700. So not the deepest of point guard positions. We've had many times where we have tons of options. Feels like this on a shorter slate. We're going to have to pick and choose. Who are some of your favorites at the top?
Yeah, Curry has been amazing, and the three-point record is not surprising. I'll tell you what, I'm almost getting tired of seeing people tweet out like, this team broke the most three-point attempts in a half record. This team broke the most pointers made in a game record. There's no point in even tweeting about it anymore because it's just going to continue to be broken, right? Like you're just going to continue to see this over and over again. We saw 287 combined points between the Warriors and Pelicans in regulation.
It was insane.
Really fun game. Really fun game. Hopefully you didn't miss that. By the way, DeMarcus Cousins starting lineup, baby. I cannot wait. I've been looking forward to this day all year. We'll get to that later. Curry against the Clippers. You know what? There's no James Harden on this slate, and that definitely makes things kind of interesting, right? 7 games on a Friday, a little bit less than usual. Curry is no Harden when it comes to fantasy production. And we know that, at least not from a consistency standpoint. I mean, there is no one like James Harden right now. That's just the bottom line. But in the same time, your high-priced guys in this slate, you got Davis, we'll get to him, KD, and then Curry. Like, that's the guys above 10K on DraftKings. I think Curry's a very solid play here. And the Clippers, defensive rating, bottom 3 over the last month. Bottom 6. Pace, top 5 over the last month. So they're allowing, the 5th or 6th most points per 100 possessions, and they're also playing at one of the fastest paces. It just makes for a phenomenal spot for Stephen Curry. I really like him here. I don't see why anybody wouldn't like him. The Clippers are one of those teams that they have some on-ball defenders that should be able to, put the clamps down. But we all know that's definitely not going to happen, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. I don't expect to see anything of the sort here. And I would expect to see a really strong game from Stephen Curry. And I think he's reasonably priced. Then you get to Lillard, who, he's kind of been just living in that 40 fantasy point range, that mid 40 fantasy point range lately. But I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't interested in him. Like you mentioned, there's no Harden, there's no Giannis Antetokounmpo, there's no Russell Westbrook on this slate, and it's thinned out aside from Anthony Davis. So I think you can get to some of these guys. And Lillard's facing a Pelicans team. I mean, we just saw it. I get that the Portland Trailblazers aren't the Warriors and right. Lillard isn't Curry, but they just allowed 147 points in regulation. I've been saying it all year. This defense has taken a serious step back, many steps back. I mean, it has not looked good for them. They're allowing a ridiculous amount of scoring. They allowed 124 points to the Cleveland Cavaliers in regulation. If Lillard were ever to bounce back and have a monster game, I definitely think this could be it. Donovan Mitchell, I'll mention him here. Look, he's playing big minutes, number one. That was a blowout over the Clippers, so he only played 35 minutes. Would have actually played more. 43 fantasy points. Prices come down $200 on DraftKings. Perfectly reasonable play. So if we're talking about those guys at the top, I definitely think that we are not pressed for options whatsoever. You even got D'Angelo Russell at a reasonable price point. I mean, Atkinson can decide what he wants to do with his minutes, and that's yet to be seen. But, yeah, above that 7K range for only 7 games is kind of nice.
Let's make our way to the mid-tier and maybe some cheap options here if some present themselves. You have Lou Williams at 67, Alfred Payton up to 64, Teague and Rose at 59 apiece against San Antonio. Dinwiddie and is at 5,700 here. And then you have one of your favorites, Derek White, at 5,600. I kid a little bit there. And then you get into the cheap guys like DJ Augustin or an Alec Burks, who was not kind to me the other night. Colin Sexton at 4,500 as well, who had a bad game against Portland, the aforementioned Portland Trailblazers. Anything here that at least piques an interest, somebody that you want to further research, or guys that you make their way into your player pool of guys you might run up for the deep dive on Friday?
Not a lot of great value, but we can take a look at a couple of these guys here if you're willing to throw some darts. DJ Augustin, at least he's starting to see consistent playing time, right? 30-plus minutes in 6 of his last 11 games, 31, 32 minutes over his last 2. If he sees playing time like that, I'm not opposed to playing him here against Brooklyn in what I expect to be a close game. Brooklyn 1-point road favorites. I mean, it's going to be a tough time getting cheap plays, but there are still a few that we can look at. Jeff Teague isn't dirt cheap, of course. And look, I'm not just going to take shots on bad plays. Like you got plenty of people out there that'll just read off every player on the player pool. And if they hit, well, I mentioned them. But if he's not a good play, I just go, take a shot on him. I'll take a shot on a guy that has some upside, sure. But there's no point in just rattling off every name you come across because it sounds good. Jeff Teague, 5,900. The minutes are concerning right now, but the price has come down. God, it's such a tough time because he really has done a great job facilitating this year. I don't think I'll be able to get there. It's going to be really tough to make that work. The guys that are injured or out for this game, there really isn't much either. Everyone's expected back for Detroit. No real guards that are expected to sit that would make a notable difference. I think I'm willing to take the L on Derek White. The guy is probably better than I had initially expected. My point earlier, though, in the month was that if he's only going to shoot 8 times per game, I don't expect him to keep shooting 7 for 8. But that was also when he was playing like 26 minutes. If we're going to get the big minutes from him, although he only played 24 minutes last game, maybe foul trouble. I'd have to look. Derek White against Minnesota is not a bad play. It's a strong matchup. I'd probably prefer him over Teague right now based on how horrible Jeff Teague has looked and really the minutes being a significant concern there as well. A couple shooting guards that we'll get to. I'll wait till we slide over to the position. But if you're just looking for dirt cheap options here, you're going to be fresh out of luck. And I think that will probably be one reason, unless news opens up, of course, that'll shift us to looking at some balanced lineup approach on this slate.
We'll talk shooting guard next. I want to get your overall take here on going against the Golden State Warriors. You have Lou Williams. You have some other pieces here as we go through, Tobias Harris and maybe some guys in the front court that you can go to. Their pace is obviously up. I think they're top 10 still in the NBA, but their defensive rating's down. So this isn't the same, Golden State Warriors team that was playing a high pace but still having a defensive rating in the top 5 in the NBA. This is a Golden State Warriors team that I think is mid-tier when it comes to defensive rating. Are you finding more and more that game stacks against the Warriors or with a couple of players are more viable than they may have been in the past? Their defense is just not as good as it may have been?
Well, because of how fast they play, I've actually really never been opposed to game stack. I don't know. Game stack's different. It depends. Like on was it what Wednesday? I was a lot heavier on guys like Dre and on what's his name and Kevon Looney, because those are the type of guys that allowed you to stack that game, get the other side of it, and still be able to play James Harden. Right? We were lucky enough that Dre and Looney had, two of their best games of the season each. Not going to happen every time out, but the Pelicans are that bad of a defense that it makes sense. Had a bunch of Klay Thompson too. He wasn't great. Didn't kill you with 35, but wasn't great. So no, I've absolutely no problem going there, and I absolutely love this game for game stack purposes, which is, we can move the shooting guard. Look, a 241.5 total, exactly where this was against the Pelicans, and that should come as no surprise. Lou Williams here. 6,700. Oh, I forgot to mention Spencer Dinwiddie. He finally bounced back after a terrible game. He's another guy that you would prefer over like a Teague or a Derrick Rose at this point. Dinwiddie is a pretty. He's an up and down player. There's no question. And Atkinson will mess with his minutes as well as Russell's, depending on who's playing well. Which is why Russell played only 27 minutes in that overtime win over the Houston Rockets. But Dinwiddie definitely makes sense here. Anyway. Lou Williams. Look at Lou Williams here. The minutes. You never know if he's going to play 25 or 28 or 30. I think this is if the Clippers can keep this competitive, mind you, it's at the Staples Center. It's not at the Oracle where the Warriors were against the Pelicans. So I like that 6-point spread. That's not really that extreme whatsoever. 241.5 total, way higher than any other game on the slate, and there is a 233.5. I think I could see Lou Williams getting 30 minutes. Keep talking for a second. There was just a bang.
Oh, bang. All right. Lou Williams, obviously a play here that has some upside. It's simply because the scoring that does have potentially. The thing with Lou Williams that we saw last year and even the year before was that he was playing in the high 30s. He was playing, time and time again. He was playing 35 to 40 minutes and having a ton of upside in usage. Here for the Clippers, over a long stretch, he was playing 25 minutes. And that's not going to get it done, though he did have a 50-point outing in that regard. Over the last three games, 28, 30, and 27 minutes, respectively, Lou Williams was the guy that when first logging on and pulling up this slate stood out. And I think I said the words game stack for Lofty, and obviously that implies more than two players from one team and one coming back the other way. You're talking about multiple players, and getting to a Curry and to a Durant here, or a Curry and DeMarcus Cousins is actually fairly cheap. Not sure as of yet how many minutes he's going to play, but as you look at the potential here for game stack, Lou Williams makes a ton of sense as somebody who, if again you're projecting probability of things, if the Clippers are staying in this one, Lofty, if they're somehow making this a game, Lou Williams will be a part of that. Like, Lou Williams will have the points to make that worthwhile. So it makes a ton of sense here at 6,700. Any mid-tier cheap guys here at shooting guard that you're intrigued by?
Hey, and by the way, in two games, the dog was just barking like crazy. I don't know what it was. I have no idea. Kind of weird.
The ghost.
AK or the AR? Which one do we go with, Dan?
I'm the guy to ask. I'm going to go. You got to go alphabetical order. I mean, that's
fair enough. That's fair. Yeah.
That's how it works, right? Like that's
exactly how it works. Lou played 25 minutes last game against them, had 25 and 9.
Right.
And then earlier in the season played 32 minutes against them, had 25, 6, and 2 steals. I mean, I really think he could get around 30 minutes. I actually think Williams should be more expensive here. And it's a really good spot for him. Pace. There's nothing, not pace up, but matching the pace. I don't see anything not to like about him, really. Outside of that, it's shooting guard. And I could hear your commentary, your monologue, because get the AirPods, right? So I could walk around the house. As long as I don't leave the house, we're probably good.
Oh my God, Matt, like making my wife listen to me walking around the house, that'd be amazing. Listen, honey, you can just walk all over and it's fine.
Exactly.
I'll go with you everywhere. It's fine.
That would drive her nuts. Joe Ingles, Adam had mentioned this a couple times, and he's spot on. Like, you've seen Gobert's minutes and Mitchell's minutes go through the roof with the whole backcourt being down. Like, they need as much reinforcements in the starting lineup as they can get. They need their best players out there as much as often, but that hasn't been the case with Ingles.
Mm-hmm.
And he's getting the 30 minutes, but you're seeing Jay Crowder play upwards of 28, 29, 30 minutes. You're seeing Derek Favors getting at times more than we had been seeing from him, whereas it hasn't really been the case with Ingles. He kind of just continues to play that same 29 to 31 minute role. Even Royce O'Neal's getting a ton of work. Royce O'Neal's playing significantly more minutes than Ingles, and he's not nearly as good. It's weird. Look, is Ingles an okay play? Yeah, it's against Cleveland. I think you could definitely do worse, but I'm not huge on him. I think McCollum, though, too. He's been a guy that really has underwhelmed from a fantasy sense this season, and we know he has a low floor, but there's a high ceiling in this game against the Pelicans, a 233.5 total. Look, just because it's not above 240 like this Clippers-Warriors game doesn't mean 233.5 isn't insane. When you and I were doing this show 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking about 205 totals and being like, hey, highest total on the 10-game slate. San Antonio, Utah's at 188. I'm not kidding. That's what it looked like. So 233.5 is wild. And you definitely have to jump on that. Nice mid-range talent at shooting guard with Lou, with McCollum here. And, I wouldn't play McCollum and Lillard together, but I think both of them are very reasonable.
Any interest in getting cheap with a guy like a Korver or somebody maybe with some 3-point upside? Don't have Cleveland's 3-point rating, 3-point allowed on the season, but I guess you could talk about a revenge narrative here for Kyle Korver. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. Yeah. It's a joke. But any interest in somebody like that who
must be so mad that he's not in Cleveland.
Exactly. Well, he's been on 2017. No, Korver hasn't played that many, but no. Do you have any interest in a Korver who's getting a few more minutes, shooting somewhat more, and is still sub 5K here and potentially putting up a couple of extra shots against the Cavaliers?
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy. I mean, would I prefer that Korver was the 36 or 3,800 that he was last game? Of course I would. Or 2 games ago when he's 3,800. But if he can get some shots up, sure. Now, mind you, he still needs to score between 15 and 19, 15 and 20 points to do you anything worth value. Which is almost why in a spot like this, I'd almost say, just go to Marco Bellinelli and hope he does the same thing, and he's cheaper. Belly's played 29, 23, 22, and 24 minutes, but the most important one was the last game because Rudy Gay returned to the lineup. And Rudy Gay played 22 minutes in this game that was decided by 4 points, by the way. Rudy Gay played 22 minutes, and Marco Bellinelli in that same game played 24. Will that be the case going forward? I don't know, but I think Belly still gets 22 to 24 minutes. And if that's the case, I mean, to be honest, he has just as good a shot as Kyle Korver at a cheaper price of giving you what you need at the shooting guard position.
I like it. Let's roll on to small forward where you have KD at the top. Then you have DeMar DeRozan, whose price tag sits at what seems like a very affordable $7,800. Now, I know he's had a string of bad outings, not really getting the rebounds that you may have seen, not taking as many shots as you may have wanted. The point out of 14, 18, 16 isn't going to get it done from a fantasy perspective, but a matchup here with Minnesota at 7,800 does seem, at least from first glance, a bit enticing. I mentioned Tobias Harris earlier. He's eligible here at 7,100. You get someone like Jason Tatum at 6,200. Wiggins is at 6K. Richardson, Ingles, you mentioned earlier, 5,900, 5,800 respectively. Small forward feels like it's going to be leaving us wanting slightly here on this slate early on. What's your take here, and what are some of the players you're looking at?
All right. Well, I think Kevin Durant's going to be in play here. Now, do I want Durant and Curry in the same lineups even in game stacks? Honestly, I don't. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think you need to force that. And we'll get to Anthony Davis in a second, obviously. But I don't think you need to do that. I'd go with one or the other. Um, I don't think both of them in the same lineup is going to be the deciding factor here. Could it be? Yeah, but I don't know how good your lineups are going to look. Maybe we'll get some value to open up, and that could change. I think Durant's a fine play. I do prefer Curry, but Durant against the Clippers here, favorable spot, no question. It actually is a pace-up game, not by a ton, but 241.5 total. Sometimes you don't really need to look past much, or you don't need some games. You don't need to look that deep into them, Dan. It's a really, really favorable spot for fantasy points to be accrued. And Kevin Durant's one of the best players in the world. That's kind of all you need. But I do think guys like, and I was saving this guy for small forward, especially because he'd been seeing a lot of starts there. DeMar DeRozan, he has been, this is kind of the spot where everyone backs away from DeRozan because he's played poorly. Now, I don't know if they will. We don't have our ownership projections yet, but he has not looked very good lately, right? Even in that overtime game with 201 combined points in a single overtime game, he had 46 fantasy points, 7 for 22 shooting, 2 for 5 from the stripe. Hasn't been getting to the line. But DeRozan, as we know, is a very good player. He's going to start scoring more. There's no question that he's going to snap out of this streak where he's scoring 14, 18, 16 points a game. 7,800 on DraftKings is a bargain against this Minnesota squad that defensively has been better over the past couple of months, but is still Springs League, still has plenty of vulnerabilities. 8,300 on FanDuel is also a very reasonable price. I definitely like this spot for DeRozan, and I'm hoping that people aren't as high on him as they have been, even though his price is down. And look, this game is the third highest total. Just because it's the Spurs doesn't really mean all that much. I think it's got a 225 total. Minnesota plays at a top 10 pace. I really like it for DeRozan. Pace up spot, good overall matchup. 7,800, 8,300. Yeah, that's a good position for him to excel, no question.
Any mid-tier cheap options here at small forward that at least are on your radar early?
Yeah, I think Al-Farouq Aminu's fine. You don't get excited about Al-Farouq Aminu ever.
Hey, speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. I will. I don't get excited about him ever. But
what I do in my bedroom is up. No, I kid. Go on.
That was relevant. This is a significant pace-up spot, and that's what you're looking for, especially for a 3-and-D guy like Aminu. Also, I wouldn't be surprised to see Aminu spend a lot of time on Anthony Davis. And
sure,
you might say, "Oh, well, that's not good. He might get in foul trouble." Well, yeah, I don't like predicting foul trouble because it's just not. Anthony Davis could go to the line 20 times, and you could see fouls on like guards coming in on help D, like stupid stuff. It's not always the guy that's got the one-on-one D. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of Al-Farouq Aminu. He's long. He is their best. He's their best wing defender, but really he's their best defender at the 4. And it makes the most sense for him to stick Anthony Davis out there. So he's only playing like 28, 26 minutes, 29. But I expect 30-plus minutes here for sure. He played 33 minutes against them earlier this season at 34 fantasy points. It feels like a spot where Aminu could have himself a really nice game. Aside from that, though, you're digging in the dumpster. Royce O'Neal, like if you want to pay for Royce O'Neal, go ahead. But just expect more of those like 18 to 20 fantasy point games than the 32, 35 fantasy point games. And that's what I would say going forward. It's not something I would get used to. And then, of course, you have your Reggie Bullocks who are going to get the minutes, but is still Reggie Bullock. And you have a lot of names like that that I would just much rather ignore. I did forget to mention, though, that Tobias Harris, probably a pretty solid cash game play on this slate. It's hard to envision him finishing with less than like 40 fantasy points, 38, 40 fantasy points in this matchup at 7,100. I like it. Yeah, he'll probably see some Draymond Green treatment, but the amount of points scored in this game, the lack of efficiency might not make a damn difference.
A couple of cheap guys here that I want to just ask you about, and then we can move to power forward quickly. You do have Rudy Gay just above 5,000 at 5,200. Damari Carroll is at 5,100. And then you get into, you mentioned Royce O'Neal. I wonder about an Omri Caspi or a Garrett Temple here. I know it's against Boston, but minutes are there for both of them. So any of those four guys, at least reasonable here, guys worth further research, or am I off the reservation a bit with any of those four?
No, the thing about look, he played 36 minutes last game in a contest that was decided by 10 points. The problem is, if you just look at JB Bickerstaff's rotations, you don't know what he's doing game to game. Like, you might look at the last game and say, oh yeah, I have a pretty good idea, but you don't, because the 2 games before that with Kyle Anderson out for most of it have been so difficult to be able to grasp. It's crazy. Like Garrett Temple played 34 minutes, then he played 21 minutes. And Omri Caspi, in those last 2 games with Anderson out, played 25 and 36 minutes. One of them, devolved into a blowout at the end, but still, it's really tough to say. Another example would be Javon Carter, 15 minutes in the starting lineup, came out in the first quarter, looked really good, played like 7 more minutes to finish the game. Then he played 28 minutes off the bench 2 days ago. So if you're doing that, you are throwing darts because they're cheap, right? Because Omri Caspi's cheap, because Javon Carter's cheap, because Temple's cheap. If I had to, if you're asking me like, if I'm going to play roulette with them, fantasy roulette with them, who would it be? It would honestly it would be Caspi, then probably Carter, and then Temple, because even if Temple gets the minutes, it's just so unlikely that he
does
in
anything
35 minutes. Yeah, I mean, look, 30 minutes, 13 fantasy points, 31 minutes, 10 fantasy points, 34, 22, 27, 9. Really bad.
So we've talked a bit about small forwards that also have power forward eligibility, the likes of Tobias Harris, but want to get quick takes here on Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin to kick off power forward, and then any other names that you have on your radar.
Yeah, Anthony Davis is pretty solid at basketball, and there isn't a whole lot more that needs to go into it. He's the one player on this slate that has that like legitimate every possible night 80-point upside. Could you say it about Curry or Durant? I guess, but the chances of them doing it's like 2%, 3%, talking 80 fantasy points. Anthony Davis is probably 20%, right? And he's probably higher than that. He's got 80 plus in 3 of his last 10.
Yep.
So take that sample, it's 30%. Or at least that's how many times he's done it recently. Huge minutes. He got banged up at the end of the last game, would have seen even more, but he sat out for a minute or two. He's crazy good. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that find ways to get Anthony Davis into their lineup. I don't love a matchup with Portland, but it doesn't really matter, right? If you're not playing Curry or you're not playing Durant, you're getting Davis into lineups. And hey, he's not 13K like Harden, but he has that upside.
Yep.
Of course, I like Anthony Davis here. 233.5 total, as we talked about. The spread in this game has the Portland Trailblazers favored by only 3 points at home. Hell, if he doesn't get hurt and you get another 40 minutes from Davis, how do you not want to talk? With his per minute production, it'd be very tough for him to hurt you with 39 or 40 minutes.
Makes total sense. What about some mid-tier or cheap options here, power forward, or any other names that you have on your radar?
So I've been lucky to dodge the Aldridge grenades the past couple of days. Well, he had one good game. I didn't play him in there either, honestly. But against Dallas and against OKC, coming off that career game where he had 56 points with 0 3-pointers, I think 7,600 against Minnesota is a very, very fair price. Him and DeRozan here. Got no issues with that at all. This game is another one that should stay close. It's a high total. There's a lot to like about it. Julius Randle wasn't great last game, but the foul trouble. Actually, let me rephrase that. Julius Randle got into foul trouble. Niko Mirotic got smoking hot off the bench, which, by the way, Mirotic is $5,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Nico's $6,200, so he's still cheap. As I talked about on Wednesday, perfectly reasonable tournament play. As I talked about on Monday, perfectly reasonable tournament play. Monday, he was garbage. Garbage. And if you played him in tournaments, it killed you. You played him in tournaments on Wednesday, he was awesome.
Yep.
And was probably in a lot of really, really good lineups. 47 fantasy points, 29 points on 9 for 14 shooting in 29 minutes. Randall got into a bit of foul trouble, but also it was Mirotich's day. Keep this in mind, though. Randall had 37 and a quarter fantasy points, Dan, in 22 minutes.
Yep.
1.69 fantasy points per minute. So, I mean, he shot 6 for 8. It was an extremely efficient game from Randall. It was 8 for 8 from the line, 3 for 3 from three-point range. I mean, I still have interest in him here. He's 7,500. Why would I not? I mean, I expect his minutes to climb back up above 30 here. I think you should probably reserve him for tournaments just because we've seen that if Mirotic does get hot, what can happen, but also because Montrezl Harrell is 7,200 on DraftKings. And I really like Montrezl Harrell quite a bit. Montrezl Harrell, 8K on FanDuel. But, man, this is one of those spots where Harrell should definitely thrive in a pace-up environment. His minutes came down to 26 last game, but I say this a lot. Bench guys, that are one of, if not the first guy off the bench, they will struggle the most, or they will see the biggest hit in blowouts because, whereas you have a guy like,
you go to the end of the bench. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. If you have a guy like, let's just say Mike Conley, it's in a blowout win. He plays his first rotation normally and second in the first half. And then the third one is also normal. And then he just doesn't come back for the fourth. So you lose like 7-8 minutes. But Harrell runs the risk of losing more than that because he doesn't play for the first however many minutes of the game, and they don't need him to play through the fourth. So I didn't look at his rotation, but he would have played more minutes in a game that they lost by 20, and he still produced like 1.11 fantasy points per minute here. It's hard to get away from him against the Warriors. I like him. He's averaging almost 30 minutes in 2 games against them already this season. Harrell's a great play.
You mentioned we talked about Caspi a little bit. There are other names. Alfred Camino is eligible here, a power forward. But you mentioned Boogie's back, and he's 5,500 on DraftKings. I don't know that I'm playing him at all, but that price tag is fun to start. It's not like they priced him up to 8 or 9K. It's 5,500. I'm sure he's playing 12, maybe 14 minutes in his first stint out there, but that's fun. Like that's a fun number to see on DeMarcus Cousins right here.
We need to see what his limitations are. If Cousins is limited to like 25 minutes.
Oh, I'm in.
Yeah. You kidding me? Now, mind you, I still don't. I do think that you could see somewhat of a, I don't want to say backseat role.
Oh, sure.
More reserved Cousins in his first game or week or whatever back. It's going to take a while to integrate into this system. Mind you, it's easy for Kevon Looney to do. It's easier for Alfonso McKinney or like Jonas Jerebko to do because they're not guys that demand the ball. But Cousins has always been one of those guys, and he's a dominant scorer, and you want to get him the ball. But just his rebounding, ball swiping, shot blocking, and easy buckets around the rim, his ability to score from literally anywhere on the court. At 5,500, if Kerr's like, hey, he'll get 25 minutes tonight, I'm playing DeMarcus Cousins in every single lineup.
That's going to be fun.
And I would actually downgrade Durant just because of the unknown.
Rebounds and uncertainty. Yep, that makes sense. Listen, I know some people don't like Cousins. I love watching him play basketball.
He's my favorite player in the league. I don't care what anyone thinks about him. He's my favorite player in the league. He has a bad rap for bad reasons. It's not his. He's misunderstood.
I dig that. Let's close it out with center. Obviously, Cousins eligible there too. Listen, I've said this pretty much every podcast we've done this year. I'll have Vucevic in my lineups. I know Jared Allen had a fantastic game last time out, but he can block. He has nice block shots, but he doesn't play a ton of defense in the typical sense. Vucevic 9,400 is expensive, but I'll have definitely some on this slate. What do you got at center, and then we can close it out.
All right. One value play at power forward if you're looking for someone and Cousins doesn't get those minutes or get what he's expected. Jay Crowder, I think, is fine. I mean, obviously a risk. He's another guy that can just completely disappear, but the minutes have been consistent, right? 29 plus minutes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 28 plus minutes in 5 of 6 games since Rubio went down. Again, kind of arbitrary, but Quinn Snyder has definitely changed up the look of that team to kind of mitigate the damage that's been done by losing the whole backcourt. And you got to shift guys over as well. And I think Crowder gets plenty of minutes here. Yeah, Vooch, the price is coming up, but it's really hard not to like him here. And I love seeing. I said this on the early bird and the deep dive, and on the deeper dive, that I expect Vooch to see extended minutes in this game because of the size of Detroit's front court, because Mo Bamba's out. You don't have a traditional backup center. It would make sense to get more minutes from Vooch in this game. And that's exactly what we saw. And it was a beautiful thing. Now, keep in mind, that game went to overtime, but Vooch still saw almost 34 minutes in regulation, which is, more than he usually sees in close games. He gets up to like 32, 33, once in a while, 34, 35. And he did get to that 34 range, which is really nice. That's important to me, man, because or he played, I think, 33 and a half. I like seeing that. I wish he played like 37 minutes in regulation like some of these other guys, because at 9,400, you want every possible minute you can get. It's not going to be the case with Vooch, though, so we'll have to deal with it. But I could see him dropping 60 in 30 minutes in this game against Brooklyn. Keep in mind, Jared Allen was very, very, very good. You mentioned him on the podcast, so props to you. But don't forget, dude, they started Gary Clark at center. D'Antoni was running some of the wildest lineups. Of course, you're going to, 24 rebounds is still a ton. But look at who he was going up against. I expect in this spot, Vooch to have a whole lot more success than Gary Clark did, put it that way. So, yeah, I like that. Yusuf Nurkic has come back down to earth a bit, but that doesn't mean I'm jumping off. Last game, he only had 10 points, but he triple-doubled.
Yep.
He triple-doubled with 5 blocks. It's just amazing what this guy can do. I love it. 28 minutes. Like, how is he not getting 30-plus minutes every night? I don't understand. Whatever. Fine. I don't even care at this rate. I'm interested in him against New Orleans. Just the amount of possessions that you're going to see, the amount of shot blocking, rebounding opportunities he's going to see, even facilitating opportunities, just should be exponentially higher than you would normally see. And a game that has a 233.5 total. What's there not to like here? I don't mind going to Nurkic and hoping that he can get me 30-plus minutes. And even in 28, we just saw him triple-double. So, how bad can it really be? Whiteside, I know it's been rough, but this could be an instance where Whiteside, I talked about with Vooch, Whiteside could get some additional burn here if Eric Spoelstra doesn't want to go to the shorter Bam Adebayo against Drummond for however many minutes. Maybe we see Whiteside get up over 30, and it's 6,500. I would definitely be in on that. It's a deep position. I'll definitely get into more of these guys on the deeper dive. Jared Allen is fine. You're getting minutes. He's playing better, so I would hope that Atkinson would continue to stick with that. And then from a value standpoint, it's scarce, but I think we at least have to keep an eye on Djigic. So we know one thing. We don't have a lot of injury news right now, but we know that Tristan Thompson has already been ruled out. Let's see what the starting lineup looks like. But Djigic played 27 minutes against Portland. I'll dig into the rotation, see how much of that came towards the end. But 27 minutes, he's $3,700. If he gets the nod to start this game, then I am 100% in on this. And I don't see why he wouldn't, because Larry Nance is out too. So the depth here is definitely lacking. I get that it's Utah, but I don't really care. It actually just means that you're going to probably want a bigger 5 out there. Imagine starting Channing Frye at center instead of Djigic against Rudy Gobert and Derek Favors. It's crazy. I don't see that being the case. Djigic will be chalk, but he'll also be in a lot of my lineups because I could easily see him getting upwards of 30 minutes in this game, whether it's a blowout or not. And that's something you want to see. Value is pretty it's at a premium. And hey, Djigic, you could do a lot worse than him say regardless of matchup, he's just slightly shy of a fantasy point per minute guy, and I'll get there. I'll be there on him tonight.
Curry, Durant, or Davis? 10K or above, guys.
Definitely Davis, of course. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward there.
Just because I like Curry doesn't mean that Davis isn't still like head and shoulders a better play than all of them. I was just saying, I think you can build some good balanced lineups on this slate too if value doesn't open up outside of Djigic, because I know I can tell you one thing. If Djigic has a bad game, right, like a terrible game, and Davis doesn't have a great game, everyone that has Davis is almost certainly going to have Djigic as well, right? So that could, if you're trying to get different and you're playing however many lineups and tournaments, getting away from Davis could get you away from Djigic if you didn't want that. And there's two what should probably be two of the chalkiest plays on the slate that in the event that they don't have good games, which is always possible, you have a definite head start.
Find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find him, of course, on SiriusXM, Sirius 210, XM87 every weekend as well. And find me on Twitter at Dan Strafford. I'm on FNTSY Saturday morning at 8 a.m. You can also find EMAC and Adam here on the DFS Early Bird and on the NBA Strategy Show on Saturday morning. You get the NBA Strategy Show from Josh and Adam Friday morning, 9:15. You get the deep dive from Dave. Then you get the deeper dive with Dave and Adam at 5 p.m. and then live before lock. So you got lots of content here from Awesemo. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD to get in for 50% off your first month. With that said, we wish you the best of luck on the slate on Friday, and we'll check you back here Monday morning. Dave and I right here on the DFS Early Bird.